Okay, so there we go. That's unmasked now and dried off. So what we can do, if we grab a cotton bud, just for the moment, okay, nice soft one, we are literally just going to give it a bit of a rub. And obviously, like everything, depending on how polished it is, let me just grab a bit of t-shirt here. Depending on how flat your surface is will depend on how well it will polish up and shine up and come to life. And because we've gone over a slightly matte surface, it should be about right for what we want, because we don't want it glowing like chrome or something like that. It's supposed to be stainless steel, so we don't want it too bright, but we want it to be a bit shiny. And the great thing is you can see you can really give it a good rub and it won't affect. Okay, I've kept the masking on deliberately because I don't want to end up with silver all over everywhere else, because I don't know how sealable this is. So we just go on like that. That's quite nice. So same with the ring round the back. Just trying to give a bit of a buff up, just to shine him up. Okay, this one we want to be a little bit more shiny. So it's a bit of a time will tell on this to see how shiny it will be. Just like so. And there we go. So now we should be able to unmask. Taking the electrics out. Plug him back in. There we go. That's that metal one down. But you see, it's quite shiny, and so's the back one as well. So I'll get this one unmasked as well, and then we can move on with a few little areas, and now we can start working on the speed brakes at the back and the actual burner can itself. Okay, so we've been working on the ring. Okay, now this is obviously the inner part of the engine. We've got the actual outer turkey feathers which make the compression. Now the entire nozzle moves in and out, okay, but we're going to have this one in the open position as if it's relaxed coming in for landing. So what we've actually done, the metallizer we use for the ring round the back, we've actually gone round and put it round the inside, and we've glued it together. It does say to poke them in the hole and do it all separate. It's underneath here, the model, hence it's got the tail stop overspray of metallizers going on it. So what we've done is we've also had ejector pin marks all around on the inside of this. So that's something that we've taken care of and got rid of them with a little file in there just to take them out, because otherwise they're going to be quite noticeable. Now we spoke about this briefly before, but because there's ceramic in the inside, a good colour for it, actually funny enough, is probably going to be this here, which is the lighter sand colour we've used for the actual model itself. But this inner part, okay, while silver in here, it's like a metal colour on the back. So what we're going to use is some dark iron to just blow in. Turn the air pressure up a little bit. There we go, coming through. Okay, this is the dark iron. Now this is buffable as well. Doesn't like coming out at the moment. Okay, and what it is like this sort of dark grey black colour, but when it buffs up it comes up quite nicely. So all we're doing literally is just spraying it around the outer part for the moment, because this will give us that black look on the inside, and what we can do is we can buff this up to make it look better. Let's grab it around here. Okay, right the way through. Now what we've got to do now is just do this outer collar. So if we hold it on the inside like this, we can paint our fingers. We just run out a tiny bit more, just in there like that. And as I say, we should be able to buff this collar quite nicely. And we need just a fraction more. That one off there. Just bring you out a little bit. Almost out of all of this, hence whilst we've been using the other one as well. Okay, so we just turn him around the other way. There we go. Because it's a metallized, what we need to now do is let that just dry off a moment, and then we can buff it up and everything else like that. And we can handle it a little bit more in a moment. At the same time, we can do these turkey feather type things on the outside. Now again, this is one of those ones where if you look at different F-16s, they've got different type tails on them. To be honest, these turkey feathers here look a little bit too fine. They look like some of the different engines the F-16 has different nozzles at the back. The one in all the reference photos looks like it's the got the carbon fibre tails, and they're very black. Okay, looking at reference photos they give you, they say silver. It's not quite that. So what we're going to do is do something sort of in between the actual colours. So again, what we're going to be using is some buffable type paints to really just bring these to life. I'm just seeing exactly what we've got of them before we go through. So if we just look at this one now, we should be okay to handle this one. So if we just grab our paints. Okay, so now these little turkey feathers, to be honest, they weren't exactly working brilliantly. Okay, so what I've actually done now, I've given them a coat, a little thin coat, a flat black, just to dull them off. And then what we'll do is when it's all together, we can polish it and really bring it back together. Now, the next thing is putting in these ceramic plates that are just going to run down in here. Now, I don't know how easy it's going to be to see, but you see where you've got the rough areas and then you've got the smooth, but we want to put them in where the smooth area is. So it's going to be slightly tricky, but what we're going to do, we just grab this sand colour, which is like a buff, which will work really well for us. So we're a bit messy down here, but we'll carry on and then we'll get this out of the way in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour a tiny bit in the colour cup, only a very, very little bit. Check our flow as it's coming out, and all we're going to do is very lightly blow it in. The area just like that, okay? And we're going to freehand it in because it's going to be weathered up anyway in there, but hopefully it'll give us that impression of the ceramic plate. Quite a few to go around. So that's those in there like that. So we'll just let those dry off a moment. So we just dry them back, feel them a little bit faint, so we'll touch those in. So I say, we're going to let those dry off and then we're going to give it a rub round with a little bit of pigment on our finger just to really grime it in a little bit and see how we get on with that. Okay, so that's those in and basically dry. So we'll just pop the lid on that a sec. Now what we're going to do is just take a tiny bit of black pigment. To be honest, if you haven't got any pigment, a little one whilst think about it, if you grab some of your rubbish off your desk that you've been spraying around, you can get it on your finger like this, perhaps some of this type stuff. Okay, and then give it a rub round on the inside is another way of doing it. So just get some overspray that's gone elsewhere onto your finger. Obviously this is the metallizer type ones, and we can just go round, but pigments will work equally as well. Okay, and we just can scuff it up. So we take a tiny bit of black. So what we do, we get a little bit on our finger, go down to the cloth, okay, onto your finger, and then very lightly we're just going to scuff it around, and what it'll do, hopefully it'll stain up, grime up and give us that look we're after. And there we go, of doing that nozzle area just like that, and as you can see it gets black on all the areas, so by the time it all comes together we should be all good. So we just grab a little bit more It'll just give us that sooty look. So we're just going to grab a little bit more, turn this up the other way. Just going to come up to the tailpipe, exactly the same on the inside of the tailpipe, just to soot it up and give it a grimy look. And there we go, that's looking quite nice up the back end, and what the camera picks that up. There we go. And then obviously we can add that to the other point. Now the thing is, I'm a bit covered in it now, so we just put the lid on there. Clean up a fraction. Okay, and then what we can do is we can start to put this together. So we're going to just use a tiniest bit of glue. You could use, to be honest, a PVA glue for this, but I'm just doing this for speed, just over the locating pin. Then we're going to take our part. Okay, and then fix it in. So it's loose at the top, but glued down the bottom. Okay, and then we're just going to take the next part. And we're going to do the same. And we are literally going to work our way round the entire thing. Now, because this is quite sooty and, you know, grimy, it's best not to handle this too much. Purely because we'll end up with all types of problems and dirt and fingerprints and everything else. But what we can do is obviously seal this one in once it's all done. This is one of those areas where your eye's naturally always drawn to engines and things like that, because you like to see what's going up inside them. So it's worth taking a little bit of extra time, making sure it's all okay and together and everything else. Last one going in, and then we can just, hopefully it fits all together, and there we go. That is our completed engine. So we've got our side rings looking like that, internal as well. So if we just let that dry off just for a few moments, make sure you're happy with how it is all sitting. Then obviously we can go around and give this a bit of a buff up and a polish if we want to, but for the moment we're quite happy with that. We'll let that dry off, we can get that fixed on, and then we can get on with the air brakes. Okay, so we said paintwork all nicely done. Really happy how it all came out. Now the thing is, there is decals that come with the kit, instead of just going out and grabbing them. As we've seen before, it's a very comprehensive kit, and obviously all these grey lines you can see here, okay, they are a lot of the actual markings and areas around on the actual model itself. Now the thing is, sometimes I prefer to spray them than use a decal, usually in tricky areas where you get curves or, you know, especially wraparound things. Some of them, to be honest, are missing off the kit. For instance, there's a grey one that runs down the leading edge of the tail, then there's another one which is in amongst all the actual mid place of the tail plane itself. So obviously it does need that one put in, so we're going to put that one in. We've obviously gone round, you can probably see just tucked underneath these things some of the grey areas. Now these are obviously unpainted areas, so radar can flow in and out or sensors aren't affected. Now I hand painted all of them purely for speed, because it was just a lot quicker to do those than it was to mess around trying to mask up. But obviously if we want a hard edge line, you know, something along here, trying to keep a straight line down there will be near on impossible. There's a few other areas that have them as well. For instance, on the rear tail planes again, they have them as well. So what we've done, we've been masking these up. Pretty straightforward. What we've got, a little bit of 6mm Tamiya tape to start with. We just bring you in at a pinch. Okay, so we've got this here, and then all we're going to do is line up a bit of 6mm down through the leading edge. Now there's a panel line to follow, so it's dead simple. Just make sure you're nice and straight. Okay, now the thing is, what it does then, it encroaches onto the other side, so we need to cut that. So again, sharp blade in your knife or a fresh bit, shallow angle, and we just cut that out like that. Okay, and then what we can do, using 6mm again, we can then just carry that panel line on without it encroaching onto the other leading edge one. Okay, that's that one. And then what we can do, we can use a little bit of 10mm for the line behind it. Now the line behind it in scale is probably only about 1mm, So I'm going to use a bit of eyesight for this one. So that's just going to go on there. And we just use another bit to backfill, just so we don't get any overspray. Now overspray, especially on a model like this, will be a real nightmare to lose and get rid of. So really, if you can, you know, mask up very heavily. One way to get around this problem of like lots of spray going everywhere and all things like that is to use, just trying to think of those colours we've got here, is to use a thick paint. What happens is, if you're using a thicker paint, it's less likely to bleed and get underneath the tapes and things like that, especially on something here where it's going to follow panel lines and various things like that. So what we will do is we will just use a bit of the colour we are going to use, which I've just got to remember which ones we've done now. So we want it to be the darker colour. So what I'm going to use is a bit of the FS36321 or H17 for this. Okay, so we give that a good old shake, or feeling that, as I say, you could use like the belly colour, but I prefer it, I think it needs to be a little shade darker, so that's why we're going to use this one here. So we give it a good old shake. Okay, and then what we'll do, blow out our airbrush, because obviously it's got a little bit of thinners left in. Okay, and then just thick, neat paint goes into the colour cut. Okay, now it's going to come out and it's going to be very speckly, so air pressure up to maximum, and all we're going to do is lightly blow in these areas. As I say, the reason for doing it thick is that it'll stop it getting out anywhere, okay, and it should level itself out. Also, when we come to put a wash on, a wash will grip to it and give it that grimy look. So as I say, this is rather thick. Cut to air, dry and back. I think what we'll have to do for the tail plane is literally just give this a couple of drops to thin it a little bit, because it is a little bit too thick. So just a few drops in there just to help that out. And what we'll do, because it is a little bit too thick, just blow through. In comes the nice colour, and I'm just going to overspray with the nicer one. And that'll help, because you put a wetter coat over a thicker coat, it will melt into it and give it a drier type of look. Now, making sure I've got no overspray on my hands, because handling this is getting a bit tricky. Obviously we're taking the tail planes and everything out, so we're going to be shooting away at all times. You can just do both sides of this tail, okay, and then just slightly in. In, but say at all times the overspray is overshooting the model, okay, it's not going down onto it anywhere. So just a little bit around the front perhaps. Okay, cutting to air, just drying it back just to help it get a grip. Okay, so we'll leave that to dry off, and then if we look at these, it should give us, oh, nicely done, panel lines. Normally let these dry off just a little bit more, but there we go, that's those done just like that, giving us those edges, which is a lot better, and to be honest it's just as quick as if you're going to decal it anyway, okay, so things like that. So we can just do the same on the other one, get it unmasked. Okay, as I say, it's always quite satisfying when you've done a nice masking job and it's come out really nicely. So there we go, there's the other one done as well. I'd say it's a bit shiny at the moment, but that's because the guns range tend to be quite glossy. By the time we knock it back, we should be absolutely fine. So we'll get that unmasked as well. So what I'm going to do is clean out the old airbrush, give it a good clean out, everything else like that. Check over the model, make sure that we've got no fingerprints or anything we need to do any more spraying. If we're happy with it and we're all fine, what we're going to do, clear all this spray away, have a dust around, clean up the place, get the paints all done, airbrush completely stripped and cleaned out, everything else like that, then we get on with some decaling. Okay, one tiny little thing I forgot to do was to actually spray the canopy. Now the canopy itself has a thin black line, runs all the way around. It's obviously the seal, okay, around the back and around the front, and has a tiny bit at the bottom. So we've masked that up. Same thing as we always do, we're going to shoot this neat, so we're almost out of the black here. So we're just going to use what we got left. Okay, so just blow through, and then we're just going to give this quite a light dusting, and then we can pop back over. Okay, but it's one of those things which is quite noticeable because we're a lighter colour. If you were doing this in greys, then in all honesty you probably wouldn't notice it, but because this is in sand colours and that, it stands out a little bit too well, hence whilst we'll do it again. But make sure you get right in underneath the angle. Okay. All the way around, cut into air, dry it down, minimise the bleed through that can get through. So we're just drying this off. Another quick pass. This should be the last one going on. Look at the backs. Dry it down again. Okay, and we'll let that stand. So there we go, that's that one done like that. Now, you might notice on the old nose of the F-16 here, we've got the bird shredder, or as it's commonly known, the identification friend and foe, set on the nose here. Now, I have had a little bit of a problem because, as you know, I tend to keep a box like this with all the little bits in so they don't get lost. Unfortunately, I've lost one of the bird shredders. So, as you can see, one of the antennas for the IFF is now missing. Okay, so at this point, you know, you usually pull your hair out and, you know, scream and kick the dog, whatever you're going to do. Okay, but with this particular one, because it's so thin, it's a real nightmare to scratch build. It's not just like a blade you could make because it has got a foot on it. Now, very luckily, and for some reason, and other reasons I don't know why, you do get half-size ones in the kit as well. There's 4 half-size and full ones in there and 4 full ones in there. The gap for the underside is totally different from the holes here. So what I've done is I've just put a little bit of super glue, a little bit of extra thin glue in the holes just to weld them over. And it will give our replacement one, which I've painted up and glued together. Once it's dry, it will go on the front and sit in there. But as you can see, we've got it unmasked now, which is quite nice to see it unmasked and really starting to come to life now. So we've gone round, we've checked it out everywhere, everything else. Now, because we're using Guns paints, they're almost like a glossy type finish. So what we can do with these particular paints is actually decal straight over the top of them, okay, without a problem at all. Whereas some paints, because they're quite flat, they give you a rough texture. These aren't bad. So if you wanted to, you could give it a coat of Future. If you don't want to, you don't really have to with these, as long as you're going to use a decal softener or something like that. So use a micro set or sol or an acrylic thinners to thin them down. So we're going to let these little bits just dry off a second, get this other little bit installed just down here on the bird shredder, then we can get on with some decaling. Okay, so this is where it really comes to life. Now we're going to get on with the decaling. Now we've covered decaling many times on all of the other videos, so I'm not going to bore you to death by sitting through this because this is going to take a good few hours to get this one up to speed. So basically what you've got on your instructions, when you follow them through, we've got top and bottom. This is common to all the marking varieties. Okay, and then side to side on the following page, and then obviously all the ones for all the markings on the fuel tanks, the weapons and the pylons. It's one of those ones where it's just a really long, laborious job. You're best off, like I do, I tend to always start on the underside, do the entire underside, then I move around to the top, and then we go from the sides. But it's one of those ones you sort of break up. Some of them we don't have to do now. Okay, we've done the leading edge strips, we've painted them as well, as same as we did on the tail, so we don't have to worry about the decals for them. Same with the one on the spine. Apart from that, all the others have got to go on. Now, some of them aren't even attached yet. Like, we haven't put the speed brakes on, so we'll have to decal them as a separate piece and work our way through. Same with the pylons and all the rest of it. But your best way is literally start on a number and work your way through the decal sheet. So obviously starting with the lower numbers first, and then go through and ticking them off as you go through, and then you'll get them all in place. Now, some of them obviously are on the aircraft, some of them you'll find won't, because some of them obviously you know, perhaps whether in theatre had resprays, don't have every single marking on there. So really it's personal choice. Again, check your references. If you've got good reference photos, you can go through them and see what you've got. So obviously we've got a common sheet here. Then we've got this one here, which is common obviously for the Israeli markings, and then you pick your tail, and then you can do any number you like because we've got all the number in here. Going the right way up, there we go. So that way we can then pick exactly what we do. But for the moment, I'm going to crack on and really start getting down all the common ones on there first. So as you can imagine, if you've seen it before, quick run through, what I tend to do is I've got a bowl of warm water. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's tepid. The reason for doing it like that is if you put decals, to be honest, these are actually printed by Cartograph, so you know you're onto a good brand here. But some of them, if you put them into water, if it's too hot, they get soft and they'll stretch and they'll go out of shape. If it's too cold, what can happen is the paper itself takes on, because it's like a blotting paper, takes on the moisture too quick. The decal isn't ready for it and it shatters, and then you end up with bits of them everywhere. So by having warm water cures that. I tend to use this stuff. This is Micro Set. If you smell it, smells a little like vinegar. Okay, I put a tiny drop in the water and we'll mix that in with a clean brush. A clean brush here. Give that a good old mix up in there. What that does is that from the minute the decal gets in there, it's being softened and it'll be a lot more easier to work with. So that's the only reason for doing it like that. So all we're going to do now is basically work our way through. So if we just do one of the top ones just to show you, because it's easier to show you on the top than it is the bottom. So what I tend to do, orientate the decal sheet into that position. Okay, and then literally what we'll do, we'll just pick a star for the moment so sure we can give you a quick run through. Good pair of scissors. Okay, obviously being careful how you come up because you don't want to be cutting through markings. But if we use a number after here, a number 6 decal, which is the Israeli star. Okay, just like so. And then what we're going to use is a spring-loaded clamp. Okay. Then all we do, face side down, don't put it in this way because it tends to roll up on itself. If you do it this way, it holds its size. We just go face down in the water like so. Okay, cotton buds, keep them handy, nice clean ones. Okay, and then obviously we know, looking at the instructions, that the star is going to go just where this there's a access hatch on both sides of the wings, and it's going to sit to the inside of that. So we give that a bit of a doing. Okay, we're just going to wet the area where the decals are going to sit first, just like so. Okay, we get the decal and we're just going to slip it with our finger, making sure your fingers are wet first so you don't have any oils on that on your finger. Make sure the stars are all painted the right way, but basically we can just come along, hold it with our finger and slide out. Okay, so we look at it, our reference, we know it covers a little bit of the actual one. We just do the same from the other side, so we're just roughly positioned. By slipping it out, you get rid of a lot of the air under there. Okay, and then we're just going to come along, feed it back so we know it goes in. If it sticks, just tease it up with your brush, and then obviously we want to position it. And what we want to do is that obviously the stars have got to be pointing forward. So make sure you've got them orientated the correct way. Okay, and then using your cotton bud, all we do is roll the excess fluid out from underneath and dry down, and just give it a bit of a tap and take off all the excess watermarks around it, just like that. Just do the same on the other side, so we make sure we're rotated forward. Just bring it around there a little bit. Okay, so we just have a look. Make sure you're similar, obviously, in position to the other side. Same thing again, running across. Get rid of all excess water drips everywhere. Okay, this you can use, there's a red version of this called Micro Set, and that will actually lock it in place. The other thing as well you can do is acrylic thinners. Now I am out of the other one. If I just actually use a different brush, Okay, so all we're going to do, take some acrylic thinners on a brush, and we just over the top. Just a quick pass. We don't want to be scrubbing it because obviously it's acrylic thinners. It'll eat into the paintwork we've just done. So literally it's just a quick brush over. Now if you see them shrivel up and look horrible and nasty, that's good, because what it does, it means it's actually absorbing into the actual texture of the actual film, and will then sink down into all the little rivets and panel lines and everything else and be suckered down into it. So that's basics of it. Now all you got to do now is the other 200 or 300 decals that are left on this kit, and you'll be done. So obviously it's going to take a long time, so give me a couple of hours and I'll get back to you.